One more just because we can.
No!
All right, good job.
Number 8.
Oh no, she's a creative one, yeah. We bring a spray paint can out there, she'll be like, let's do this.
Until I'm ready to commit, I don't know that we want to spray paint things, but...
Look this way, guys.
Okay.
Thanks.
Kenny, get on! Kenny, get on, Darren. Get off, guys, I can't.
Hi, Grace. You being a helper? Yeah? You being a helper?
Oh, shucks.
I got it. That's a perfect one.
I got more bags.
Art, I want to get up where all the apricots are.
Oh, dang it.
I want to get up. That, but I can't get up the first one. What we do?
You guys have fire ants. But they're not.
We've got a year and haven't been bit, there's no fire.
Okay.
We wore Darren out. It's nap time now. Hello, ladies. Are we ready for lunch?
Yes, I am ready.
Are we ready for lunch?
I'm like an hour ago. I'm ready for lunch a year ago.
When I was 12 years old, I was a newspaper carrier. We'd ride the bike, we'd fold the papers and put them in the paper bag, and we'd take each paper and throw it and try to hit the port. If you threw it the wrong way, it would open up and go. They couldn't have rubber bands because it was during World War II, and all the rubber was used by the Army. They didn't have any rubber bands in those days. I thought they didn't have any chewing gum either. All the chewing gum went to the Army. Our boss gave us 10 cents if nobody complained about losing a newspaper. The problem was that we had to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Is that early? Really early. And
To deliver paper.
deliver the papers. And then we get them all delivered on Sunday morning and come back and take a bath and get ready for church. But between the time we delivered the papers and the time the people got up, the wind would come and blow the papers off the porch. Because some people would sleep in and not get up and get their papers. So one guy every Sunday would sleep until about noon. When he got up, his paper had blown away. I threw it there by about 6 o'clock in the morning. And so he would call the paper, and they called it a kick. He would kick or complain, and I wouldn't get my 10 cents from the boss because you had to not have any complaints to get 10 cents. In those days, 10 cents would buy you 2 hamburgers or 2 ice cream cones.
Or a ticket to a movie, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
movie costs 10 cents. If you're under 12 years old, movie costs 10 cents. If you're over 12 years old, it costs 25 cents. So the adults paid 25 cents for a movie. So I thought, how can I keep this guy from complaining so much? So one Sunday morning, I delivered his paper. I went out in the street and got a big rock, and I brought some nails, and I nailed all 4 corners of his paper to his wooden porch. That wouldn't blow away.
It did blow away.
So I put one nail right in the middle. Then I wrote him a little love note, and he never complained again. Because his paper never blew away.
So did you mail it every Sunday after
Nope.
that?
Only had to nail it one time. He was a quick learner. There was a General Hadley. He was a colonel at the time, and he was kind of a wise guy. And so we used to fly over and we'd take these big 55-gallon drums of water, and they're pretty heavy when they fill 4 of those. They would take 4 of those and put them on wooden pallets, strap them down with straps, and then have a forklift, put them in the airplane. We'd put a parachute on it, and then we'd go up and then take up the back doors of the airplane so we'd be balancing there. We'd fly over the target at a certain time, when we figured the exact time. I would tap the co-pilot on the shoulder, pull a handle, and a small parachute would pop out like this. Once it caught the wind, it pulled the big parachute out. And when the big parachute pulled out of the airplane, then all those cans of water, the 4 big barrels of water that were strapped to this wood, pulled out of the airplane. And my job was to figure exactly what it took with the wind and everything to get that 4 big 5-gallon or 55-gallon drums of water on the target. So we're flying out west of Salt Lake City, a place called Wendover, and he called and he said, "Who's in the lead airplane?" The navigator. I said, "Captain Alford, sir." And he said, "Alford, I've parked my vehicle right on the impact point, on the X."
Where they were supposed to hit.
Where we had to hit on the X. And he said, "I dare you to hit my truck." And it was a half track. It was part tractor and part wheels in front. They used them in the war to drive around. And so he's parked right there looking real smug. And so I did all the calculations. I figured the wind, and I figured that when it goes out of the airplane, it goes this way for a while, and it goes this way for a while. I figured everything like that. What did I have to do to figure all those things? What's it called?
Multiplication.
Christine teaches it. Math, isn't it? It was mostly geometry. And we figured this out. And when the exact second came to release the load, I tapped the co-pilot on the shoulder pretty hard. And then he pulled the lever, and the small chute popped out of the airplane in the back. It had a spring. When he pulled that lever, it would spring out, and the small chute was only this big. It pulled out, and it caught the wind, because the plane's going about 180 miles an hour. Once it caught the wind, then it pulled the big chute out. It had 2 great big G11 chutes on it. It pulled them out, and as the big chutes went out, it pulled this big, the pallet was a little bit bigger than that blanket right there, with 4 55-gallon drums full of water strapped down. And it pulled the big pallet with the water on out and started going down. And see, it doesn't just go straight down because the wind blows it. When it first goes out of the airplane, it goes like this because it follows the airplane. Then the wind blows it, and it goes like this. You have to figure all those things out with mathematics. And so it's coming down. I heard him say, "Hey, that's coming right down on our truck. Let's get out of here." And he was a colonel at that time, and so he had his sergeant start the truck and shift the gears, but he tried to shift the gears and it wouldn't shift. And finally he said, "It's going to get us, jump." And they jumped off the truck, and this great big, 4 big 55-gallon drums of water come on top of the truck.
Why did they put the truck there?
Just to be in a smart aleck.
Good question.
And it took out the radiator.
He thought they couldn't hit
It took out part of the engine, took out the radiator, and he jumped for his life. And he called back and he said, "Alford?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, you're going to get an award for getting a bullseye, and you're going to get a statement of charges to pay for my truck."
Not my fault, sir.
And then, I never had to pay anything because he did the wrong thing by parking his truck on the X. Now, one time in South Carolina, we dropped a Jeep out. We used to drop cannons, Jeeps, trucks. Those planes were big.
Soldiers?
Soldiers mostly, paratroopers mostly. But we dropped this Jeep out, and the parachute didn't open. We're right over the airport at Arlington County, South Carolina. So here comes this Jeep with the parachute going shh. It came down, it hit the concrete of the runway. It splattered those tires out like this. The wheels went and so we landed and went over and looked at it. And instead of having the wheels like this, the wheels were like this. And everybody thought it was kind of funny, but it cost him a Jeep. Another time, a man jumped out at Fort Benning, and his chute didn't open. Now, they always carry 2 parachutes. One they snap up and back, so when they jump, it pulls the ripcord. If that doesn't open, then he pulls the other one, called the emergency chute. and he pulled them both, and the emergency chute opened too late. He came down and lit feet first in a plowed field. And it buried him up to about here in that plowed. That's why he used the plowed field, because it was softening. He broke some legs, but didn't kill him. I think he survived. But we dropped a lot of things in a lot of years. Dropped the paratroopers and the loads, and those airplanes would hold a bus, and the big C-5s would hold 100 Volkswagens. Imagine that. A Volkswagen was as big as one of the cars. And I didn't fly on the C-5, I just been inside of one. They'd hold 100 of those Volkswagens. They were big. And your cousin Josh flew the C-17s. That's the biggest transport we have now. And they flew a lot of things like that. And then while I was over Afghanistan, he took a flag and he flew over Afghanistan. And he sent the flag to us and he said, "This flag has flown over Afghanistan." And we got the flag downstairs on the wall. It's that flag at the store.
Mom, do you want to tell a story about teaching elementary school? Because a lot of these kids are elementary school age.
Who taught first grade?
Who's been in first grade before? Who's gonna go into first grade?
Did you just finish first grade?
Yeah.
Perfect
Place for a picnic.
Not Jeffrey.
Well, I could tell you about one time in my first grade class, we decided to do something different. And we were studying in our book the Three Little Pigs. And so we decided to put on a play about three little pigs. And of course the big bad wolf. So we picked the tallest boy in the class to be the big bad wolf, which he was so excited to do that. Got a little bit exuberant in his, we kind of had to like, mellow down a little bit. But we loved it, and we took it around. We asked the teachers if we could take it around. It only took about 15 minutes, you know, to do our story of the three little pigs. And we made a house. We made the different houses that they lived in. And then we had the brick house. And so we, it was big enough. I got some paper from the grocery store in the butchery shop, you know, where they cut up the meat. And we got like a great big long one before the brick house. And so we thought we were really great doing this. And we went to every class, and they were so nice to us, and they clapped, and it was just, the first graders felt so good giving the three little pigs, you know, and we felt really good. And I'd made cookies, and so when we got back to our class, it was just about time for school to let out. So I said, okay, now, when you line up to go out home, there's a cookie for you, okay? And we just had a ball. Well, the next week, the boy that was the tallest in the class was also very smart. And he really needed to go to second grade, but he needed the basics that you get in first grade and then in second grade. And so we were talking about it. Well, his folks had a person to come in. And he was a doctor, and he was a doctor of children, and he also told if they had any problems or anything, they could discuss it with him. And so he was to talk to this boy. And why, I don't know why the parents wanted that, because he was a very nice boy, but he was a very good boy too. And so he did, and the psychiatrist came into my class where the parents were and said, he's just a normal boy. He said, I gave him some questions to answer, and he gave me the silliest answers. And he said, no, I don't think he ought to skip the first grade. And I said, well, neither do I. I think they shouldn't skip until after the second grade. But anyway, so he was telling about all the things, and he said it was so silly. I showed him this mansion on the hill, big, beautiful house. Then I showed him this little brick house down at the bottom, and it was small, a brick house, small house, but the mansion on the hill was beautiful. And I asked him, which one would you rather live in? And he said the brick house. Can any of you guess why he said the brick house?
Because it's the stronger house, like the 3 little pigs.
Right on.
Okay, so I started laughing. And the parents looked at me, and I just cracked up, and I just couldn't stop it. And I said, so would I, you know? And he said, what? And he was looking at me like, and you're teaching first grade children? And I said, we have spent the better part of the month in about 20 minutes a day of just talking about what could we do for the whole class before school got over, you know? And we decided we would put on a play. And it was the 3 little pigs. And I said, in what home saved them? Everyone together? The brick house. So I said, of course he chose the brick house. I said, I would have chosen the brick house. And I started, and I just lost it. I really did. And to me, it was funny. To him, it wasn't funny because that was his job. He would analyze how children were doing. But there was a reason that he chose the brick house. And I caught the reason because in that case, right after our play, I would have chosen the brick house too. How many of you would have chosen the brick house?
Me.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a mansion, so most definitely.
Oh, I'd probably have to keep it clean. I wouldn't either. Yeah. Okay. So, but anyway, that was one of the funny things, and one of the funny things that I have remembered. Well, Gigi stopped teaching when Papa was going to quit, and they told me that in the first grade, some of my children had said that I put my arms around them. Well, there's a time when we would do, after spelling, had a spelling test, and if they missed 1 or 2, I would have them come up to my desk, one at a time, and I would be at the desk, and I'd say, well, let's talk about your paper. And they were standing right here. Well, first graders, I found the first year of teaching, that when you invite them into the desk, and I'm sitting here, they come here, and then they go like this to see what we're doing with their papers. Mine had the correct spelling. Theirs, the one we talk about the ones they missed. But they would go like this to me. Now, if they went like this to me, what do you suppose Gigi would have done?
Put your arm around them?
I would put my arm around them because they had made a mistake. And with first graders, it's really hard when you learn that you made a mistake and maybe somebody will feel bad about it and you might have hurt somebody's feelings and they were afraid to be hurt and they didn't like insecurity. So they would stand closer. And inevitably, they all did it. And so the first thing Gigi would do, as being a grandmother and a great-grandmother, what do you do when you come close to me? What do I automatically do? I put my arm around you. Yeah.
Just like you did to me when I was kind of far away from you and then you...
Absolutely. Yeah, we just do that. And I did that. And a couple of the children told their parents that the thing they liked the best was coming to the desk because Mrs. Alford would put her arm around them. And that they said, no, you can't touch the children. And I said, you know, maybe it's time I quit. Because I would automatically, when they would come, they wanted the assurance, and you know you do too, when we've done something and made a mistake, we want the assurance that somebody doesn't stop loving us just because we made a mistake, right? We just correct the mistake. Yeah. And that's what they wanted. So my arm went around them automatically. I just do it. I do it with each one of you. When you're right by me, I just put my arm around you because I love you. And I wanted them to know that misspelling a word wasn't bad. We just correct that. And it's okay. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we don't mean to usually, or we wouldn't have made them, and it wouldn't have been a mistake. But we don't get upset about mistakes, do we?
No.
If you didn't mean to, I always said, did you mean to do that? They said, no. I said, well, then we just correct the mistake, don't we? Yeah. And then we go on. And it's no biggie if you intentionally misspelled everyone, I would wonder, you know. But you don't do that. But you wanted the assurance, and they wanted the assurance that they weren't bad or they'd done something really wrong. We just corrected the mistake. I think that's what I wanted to do. And when they said no, I thought, oh, you know, I'm too old for this. I think I better just be a grandma and a great-grandma. Okay?
Yeah,
She
you
is
can
a
put
great
your arms
grandma.
around all these guys all you want.
Does anybody have
Oh,
any
thank you.
questions?
I've got a question. He was in the same school your grandpa went to, but I wasn't the principal when your grandpa went there. But when Uncle Doug went there, he was in the 5th grade, and I was his principal. So he'd walk down the hall and he'd go, "Hi, Dad." "Hi, Dad." And then during lunch hour, we got to eat lunch together. And then his teacher said, "I'm kind of under the gun, Mr. Chadburn. I've got your son Doug in my class. I better be a good teacher, hadn't I?" "Yes, you better." So I want to tell you one little other story about flying. Who knows where? Ever heard about Vietnam?
Yes.
You'll hear more about it. There was a war in Vietnam, and we used to take things over to them when the soldiers fly things over to them. And one night we were flying along, and I was listening on the radio, and it was about halfway between Honolulu and Wake Island. I hear this, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday." Now, Mayday in French, but we say it in English too. Who knows what Mayday means? What is it?
Like a distress call.
Distress signal. They said, "We are sinking. We are sinking." And we heard that. And the pilot called back to the navigator, and he said, "Do we have enough gas on board to go search for him?" And I said, "I heard he figured out." And said, "Yes, we do," for about an hour. So we turned and went towards where they said they were. We got to where they said they were, and they weren't there because the water had been tossing around. They'd been without power for about 3 days, so they were just didn't know where they were. And then they would hear them on the radio. It said, "We are the O.S. Makua, a fishing boat out of Honolulu. We are sinking. We are sinking," because their power was gone and the pump stopped pumping out of the boat. And so we flew around and flew around. It was pitch black, midnight. We couldn't find them. We're flying around, and we said, "Why don't you set off a flare?" And the captain of the ship called back and said, "I only have one flare left, and I'm going to save that till I hear your engines." And then a sergeant named Nielsen said to me, "We've got a whole big box of flares right in the navigator's compartment. We got that little pistol. You can fire flares out that little flare hole." He said, "Why don't we fire flares and let them see us? Because we got a lot of flares." They only had one. So he loads the gun and goes, nothing. We're still heading for him. Pretty soon we hear him say, "We see the light! We see the light! We can see your airplane! We saw the flare!" And so then they fired their flare, and we could see their flare went up, just like these things you guys are using last night. They were a light like that. So we flew to where we saw the light and began to circle. Then you could talk to them really good because the radio reception was really, really good. And they said, "We've lost an engine on our ship, on our boat, fishing boat, and we're sinking." And he said, "Could you drop us 2 things, cigarettes," because they were all just having nicotine fits, "and a bilge pump." And we said, "You're not going to believe this, but we're an all LDS crew. There's not one cigarette on the whole airplane." I couldn't believe that for the Air Force. Not one cigarette on our whole airplane. And they said, "Plus we don't have a bilge pump." So I said, "We'll call the Coast Guard." Now what's the Coast Guard?
Some people that rescue.
They have a big orange stripe on their ship, on their airplanes too. So we called Wake Island's Coast Guard. And they came out. We had to stop circling them because we're getting low on fuel, so we flew to Wake Island, and the ship came out, tossed a line to them, and towed them into Wake Island and saved them. And then the next week, we came back from Vietnam through Wake Island. The local paper said, "Coast Guard saves OS Makua." We didn't care because they got saved anyway.
They got saved.
It could have been serious, you know.
The branch, such a pretty little branch. Pretty little branch. They have a seat. And the birds on the tree and the trees are holes in the ground. Green guys go around, green guys go around. Then it's the nest, then it's the bird, then it's the feather, then it's the flea, then it's the elephant.
Alright.
Then the nest.
Everybody,
I looked at my
listen
notebook.
up.
Okay, fine.
Listen up for just a second. We're gonna turn the time over to Popper, who's got something to tell you.
And I've got a helper here named Grant's going to help me. So first of all, these are for the adults. You all know the 4th of July was yesterday, so we celebrate it today. The 24th of July we celebrate later, but there's a big celebration in August. It's when Gigi turns 45 for the second time. How will that make her, Marianne? 45 for the second time. 90.
It's okay, you can say it. It's not a dirty word. It's okay. It doesn't seem possible, but it is.
Am I next?
Yeah. I'm excited.
Invitation to Gigi's birthday.
Dad jokes are very nice.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cute.
Okay, now, Grant's my assistant. And how many have ever seen a show called Mary Poppins?
I've seen
Now,
it.
what do they want to do for the birds? They want to feed the birds. How much money do they have to have?
Tuppence.
Tuppence. And how much money is tuppence?
2 pennies.
2 pennies. How many of you have a tuppence in your collection?
I do.
Do you?
We're going to
Wonderful.
have another tuppence.
However, for those who don't.
Wait, is that real money?
All the children. Give it to Aunt Rachel.
Yes. For the babies, I think maybe the mommy or daddy should have it.
When Uncle lived in Japan, he told me that the 5 yen is a good luck coin. So we're not going to ask Grant to pass out a 5 yen coin.
Where's 5 yen from? Where's this coin from? Japan.
It's from the general surgeon.
Japan.
Is there a hole in it?
Yes, there's a hole.
Oh no! You let them wait too long in the cupboard and they rotted.
No, Grandpa, now we can just put it on a necklace.
Look at this 5 yen. Can you all see the hole? Now look and see if you can see the rabbit by the hole.
Is there a rabbit by the hole?
Who can see a rabbit? Is there a rabbit there?
Did you get one?
No.
I'll bet that rabbit went down the hole. Oh! That's where that rabbit went, down the hole.
Thank you, Granny.
Okay.
Dad, my son, the Sawyer
look
kids,
at the
their other
coin-
grandpa used the yen. On his
There's a gear, look around the hole and it's a gear for industry. And there's water and rice on there as well.
You see that?
Cool.
See the gear?
What do we say to Popper?
Who brought the coins to us?
Thank you, Great Uncle Doug.
Wherever he is. Well, darlings, it has meant so much to Gigi and Popper to have you here today, and we want you to know how much we really appreciate it. So we went to Mrs. Cavanaugh's and got some chocolate.
Chocolate candy. Not for right now. Not for right now. This is for
And what
later.
we're going to do is hand them to your grandma, and she is going to take care of them and put them in a place that has some ice that will keep them from melting. Okay? And so after farm, they have ice.
Mom, are
well, on your way up, just before your way home, on your way home, then I think about that. Is that when you get home?
We can see
No.
it in there.
We don't work chocolate in the
Yeah,
Oh, of course you don't.
We're not opening them, we'll open them up. They're gonna be back in the vacation home.
Oh,
It's a special movie night treat.
We're gonna open.
Oh, you're having movie night tonight. You could have Cavanaugh Chocolates.
They don't get plain.
Oh, you have them. I'm not sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Gigi.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago,
My brother
a
loves
couple
them.
named Cavanaugh who lived in South Dakota. And they were members of our church. And President Benson, who was an apostle, came to their home for conference, stayed in their home. They gave him some homemade chocolates. He said, "These are so good, you ought to make these and sell them." And so they moved to Ogden, began making these chocolates, and Mrs. Cavanaugh and Mr. Cavanaugh worked in the temple with Gigi and Papa. Whenever we had a party for the temple workers, they'd bring great big boxes of chocolates. It was all chocolate. And that's what we like Cavanaugh's chocolate.